Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, those between, above, and beyond the binary. It's June 1st of May 2020. Dang, almost got it. Anyways, hi everybody, welcome to Brother Bedtime. It's me, Colin, and it's bedtime. How are you? Oh, what a day. What a busy day it's been. Emotionally, all over the world, I feel as though things are frazzled. So I hope you're well and you're keeping safe wherever you are, and that you are spending some time away from the screen when possible, and all of the very important, but admittedly a little concerning news that's going around these days. But this is a space where we won't be really talking too much about that. We're here to relax, to enjoy one another's company, and to wash off the stress of the day. So I'd like to begin with just ease into things real gentle like. How was your weekend, everybody? Let's see, what did I get up to? I had a friend that had a birthday. She turned 23 on Saturday. That's right, it was Saturday. And I also got to catch up with my old chum, Andrew, who recently moved back to Edmonton from Regina. He's been in town for about a month now, and I haven't seen him yet, so it was really nice to reconnect with them. We did a little bit of cooking. We did some gardening. Our radishes are coming up, which is very exciting. And we've had a few beans sprout as well already, but they're not the ones that we planted in the rows, so they're sort of a mystery. We'll have to see how the rest of these things progress. I'm personally am most excited for the wildflowers because I have no idea what they're actually going to look like, and if we get some bees up there, it'll make me very happy. Mulrick says they watched so many movies and anime, very relaxing, and played D&D. Heck yes, Mulrick. If there's one person in the world that I know deserves a weekend of nothing but binging and enjoying and relaxing, it's you. I hope your programs have been clipping along well. Today I work for the Writers Guild, as some of you may be aware, and I run a summer camp called Wordsworth. And it's a program that's very near and dear to my heart, and with all of this COVID-19 stuff going on, we had to cancel our in-person program. But I'm very happy to finally be able to announce that we are going to be launching, well, we have just launched our online program called Circuit Tree. And it's a young writers creative residency program that's going to be held entirely online. It runs for 2 weeks for different age groups in July. I believe July 12th to the 17th is ages 11 to 14. And the following week, July 19th to the 24th, is ages 15 to 19. And we're going to be doing all kinds of really wonderful stuff that I'm excited for. It's obviously a little bit out of my wheelhouse. I'm much more used to like running the program in person and having people with me to talk to. So I guess this whole Twitch thing has been good practice for that. But we've got all kinds of schemes up our sleeves. We're going to be doing scavenger hunts and running classes on ekphrastic poetry and movie making and songwriting and social justice writing, even some incredibly topical stuff like that. So if you are a writerly teen or of a creative persuasion of any teenage demographic, really, check out Circuitry. You can find it through the Writers Guild of Alberta's webpage. And if you have any more questions, feel free to pop in the chat and let me know. So there's my little professional plug. It's been a long time coming, and I'm very excited to finally have it off the ground. And now the program just kind of gets to percolate and grow from the inside, and I'm so excited to see what comes from it. Let's see, what else did I get up to this weekend? I didn't go grocery shopping like I was planning to, and I didn't clean the upstairs bathroom like I thought I was going to. But there's all the time in the world for that, so I'm not going to let it eat me up alive. The fact that there's still things living in the toilet upstairs. I mean, it's not that bad. You probably don't want to know about my toilet, even if it is a beautiful, lovely, pristine toilet made of pure gold. So let's move on, shall we? Tonight's story is the continuation of Prince Caspian by C.S. Lewis. When we last left our intrepid band of adventurers, the Pevensey children and the dwarf Trumpkin, they had gone awry, they'd gone astray in the woods, and were were decidedly lost, and the path that they took, against the better caution of Lucy, who swore that she saw Aslan beckon them to go another way, led them straight into some arrow fire from King Miraz's encamped forces outside of the forest. Eventually, they did turn around, and Lucy convinced everybody to follow her. And one by one, they slowly began to be able to perceive the great cat of the universe, Aslan himself, which was quite an embarrassing moment for some of them. Susan, in particular, had the hardest time confessing that she secretly believed Lucy all along, but was feeling a little too proud, I suppose would be the word, to follow her heart. Nevertheless, Aslan has welcomed them all with an embrace of his cat-like paws, and Trumpkin the dwarf, the biggest doubter of them all, they are now fast friends after having been tossed around like a rag doll. He seemed to enjoy that very much. And now we return to our story for a chapter that is entitled Sorcery and Sudden Revenge. Ah, yes, that's right. After they had met up with Aslan, they all made their way through the woods and finally arrived at Aslan's How, where the beleaguered forces of Prince Caspian are in hiding from the encamped army of King Miraz. And there was a sweet rager. Bacchus and Silenus showed up with a bunch of wild girls, and they drank grapes, and they laughed, and they ate grapes, and they drank, well, presumably grape juice, and they laughed, and they danced, and they played, and they sang, and it was a very wonderful time. Meanwhile, the boys were sent into the deep dark cave to go solve some problems. So with swords drawn, Peter, Trumpkin, and Edmund crept away into Aslan's How, while Aslan and the girls stayed behind to enjoy a delicious Grecian revel. And I suppose that is where we will begin our story. Cheers, everybody. Chapter 12. Sorcery and Sudden Vengeance. Meanwhile, Trumpkin and the two boys arrived at the dark little stone archway which led into the inside of the mound, and two sentinel badgers, the white patches on their cheeks were all Edmund could see of them, leapt up with bared teeth and asked them in snarling voices, "Who goes there?" "Trumpkin," said the dwarf, "bringing the High King of Narnia out of the far past." The badgers nosed at the boys' hands. "At last," they said, "at last." "Give us a light, friends," said Trumpkin. The badgers found a torch just inside the arch, and Peter lit it and handed it to Trumpkin. "The DLF had better lead," he said. "We don't know our way about this place." Trumpkin took the dwarf and went ahead into the dark tunnel. It was a cold, black, musty place, with an occasional bat fluttering in the torchlight and plenty of cobwebs. The boys, who had been mostly in the open air ever since that morning at the railway station, felt as if they were going into a trap or a prison. "I say, Peter," whispered Edmund, "look at those carvings on the walls. Don't they look old? And yet we're older than that. When we were last here, they hadn't been made." "Yes," said Peter, "that makes one think." The dwarf went on ahead, and then turned to the right, and then to the left, and then down some steps, and then to the left again. Then at last they saw a light ahead, light from under a door. And now for the first time they heard voices, for they had come to the door of the central chamber. The voices inside were angry ones. Someone was talking so loudly that the approach of the boys and the dwarf had not been heard. "Don't like the sound of that," whispered Trumpkin to Peter. "Let's listen for a moment." All three stood perfectly still on the outside of the door. Here we can see Edmund, Peter, and Trumpkin the dwarf making their way through the shadowy catacombs of Aslan's How. There's a fun little bat following them just between Peter and Edmund's head. Let me see here. and some sort of hieroglyphic-y looking things sort of scritched on the wall back there. Looks like the camera's not going to cooperate this time. Oh, wait, maybe. There we go. Hey, nice work, Trumpkin. Sick torch bearing, bro. You know well enough, said a voice. That's the king, whispered Trumpkin. Why the horn was not blown at sunrise this morning. Have you forgotten that Miraz fell upon us almost before Trumpkin had gone, and we were fighting for our lives for the space of 3 hours and more? I blew it when first I had a breathing space. I'm not likely to forget it, came the angry voice, when my dwarves bore the brunt of the attack, and 1 in 5 of them fell. That's Nickabrick, whispered Trumpkin. Oh, Nickabrick. How did he go again? I'm not likely to forget it. There he is. For a shame, dwarf, came a thick voice. Truffle hunters, said Trumpkin. We all did as much as the dwarves, and none more than the king. Tell that tale your own way for all I care, answered Nickabrick. But whether it was that the horn was blown too late, or whether there was no magic in it, no help has come. You great clerk, you master magician, you know-all, are you still asking us to hang our hopes on Aslan and King Peter and all the rest of it? I must confess, I cannot deny it, that I am deeply disappointed in the results of the operation, came the answer. That'll be Dr. Cornelius, said Trumpkin. Dang, I wish I'd done some vocal warm-ups. Looks like it's going to be a very chatty chapter. To speak plainly, said Nickabrick, your wallet's empty, your eggs addled, your fish uncaught, your promises broken. Stand aside, then, and let others work. And that is why... The help will come, said Truffle Hunter. I stand by Aslan. Have patience, like us beasts. The help will come. It may be even now at the door. Truffle Hunter, you don't know how right you are. Pah, snarled Nickabrick. You badgers would have us wait till the sky falls, and we can all catch larks. I tell you, we can't wait. Food is running short. We lose more than we can afford at every encounter. Our followers are slipping away. And why? Asked Truffle Hunter. I'll tell you why. Because it is noised among them that we have called on the kings of old, and the kings of old have not answered. The last words Trumpkin spoke before he went, and went most likely to his death, were, If you must blow the horn, do not let the army know why you blow it, or what you hope from it. But that same evening everyone seemed to know. You'd better have shoved your gray snout in a hornet's nest, Badger, than suggest that I am the blab, said Nickabrick. Take it back, or... Oh, stop it, both of you, said King Caspian. I want to know what it is that Nickabrick keeps on hinting we should do. But before that, I want to know what those 2 strangers are whom he has brought into our council, and who stand there with their ears open and their mouths shut. They are friends of mine, said Nickabrick. And what better right have you yourself to be here than that you are a friend of Trumpkin's and the Badgers? And what right has that old dotard in the black gown to be here, except he is your friend? Why am I the only one who can't bring in his friends? His Majesty is the king to whom you have sworn allegiance, said Truffle Hunter sternly. Court manners, sneered Nickabrick. But in this hole we may talk plainly. You know, and he knows, that this Telmarine boy will be king of nowhere and nobody in a week, unless we can help him out of the trap in which he sits. Perhaps, said Cornelius, your new friends would like to speak for themselves? You there, who and what are you? Worshipful Master Doctor, came a thin, whining voice. So please you, I'm only a poor old woman, I am, and very obliged to his worshipful dwarfship for his friendship, I'm sure. His Majesty, bless his handsome face, has no need to be afraid of an old woman that's nearly doubled up with the rheumatics and hasn't two sticks to put under her kettle. I have some poor little skill, not like yours, Master Doctor, of course, in small spells and cantrips, that I'd be glad to use against our enemies if it was agreeable to all concerned, for I hate 'em. Oh, yes, no one hates better than me. This is all most interesting and satisfactory, said Dr. Cornelius. I think I know now what you are, madam. Perhaps your other friend, Nickabrick, would give some account of himself. A dull, gray voice, at which Peter's flesh replied, I am hunger, I am thirst. Where I bite I hold till I die, and even after death they must cut out my mouthful from my enemy's body and bury it with me. I can fast 100 years and not die. I can lie 100 nights on the ice and not freeze. I can drink a river of blood and not burst. Show me your enemies. And it is in the presence of these two that you wish to disclose your plan, said Caspian. Yes, said Nickabrick, and by their help that I mean to execute it. There was a minute or two during which Trumpkin and the boys could hear Caspian and his two friends speaking in low voices, but could not make out what they were saying. Then Caspian spoke aloud. Well, Nickabrick, he said, we will hear your plan. Whew. I don't know, these newcomers are giving me the heebie-jeebies. There was a pause so long that the boys began to wonder if Nickabrick were ever going to begin. Let's take a pause here for a second for effect. When he did, it was in a lower voice, as if he himself did not much like what he was saying. All said and done, he muttered, none of us knows the truth about the ancient days in Narnia. Trumpkin believed none of the stories. I was ready to put them to the trial. We first tried the horn, and it has failed. If there ever was a High King Peter, and a Queen Susan, and a King Edmund, and a Queen Lucy, then either they have not heard us, or they cannot come, or they are our enemies. Or they are on their way, put in Truffle Hunter. You can go on saying that till Miraz has fed us all to his dogs. As I was saying, we have tried one link in the chain of old legends, and it has done us no good. Well, but when your sword breaks, you draw your dagger. The stories tell of other powers besides the ancient kings and queens. How if we could call them up? If you mean Aslan, said Truffle Hunter, it's all one calling on him and the kings. They were his servants. If he will not send them, but I make no doubt he will, is he more likely to come himself? No, you're right there, said Nickabrick. Aslan and the kings go together. Either Aslan is dead, or he is not on our side, or else something stronger than himself keeps him back. And if he did, how do we know he'd be our friend? He was not always a good friend to dwarfs by all that's told, not even to all beasts. Ask the wolves. And anyway, he was in Narnia only once that I ever heard of, and he didn't stay long. You may drop Aslan out of the reckoning. I was thinking of someone else. There was no answer, and for a few minutes It was so still that Edmund could hear the wheezy and snuffling breath of the badger. "Who do you mean?" said Caspian at last. "I mean a power so much greater than Aslan's that it held Narnia spellbound for years and years, if the stories are true." "The White Witch!" cried three voices all at once, and from the noise Peter guessed that three people had leapt to their feet. "Yes," said Knickerbrick, very slowly and distinctly. "I mean the witch. Sit down again. Don't all take fright at a name as if you were children. We want power, and we want a power that will be on our side. As for power, do not the stories say that the witch defeated Aslan, and bound him, and killed him on that very stone which is over there, just beyond the light?" "But they also say that he came to life again," said the badger sharply. "Yes, they say," answered Knickerbrick. "But you'll notice that we hear precious little about anything he did afterward. He just fades out of the story. How do you explain that if he really came to life? Isn't it much more likely that he didn't, and that the stories say nothing more about him because there was nothing more to say?" "He established the kings and queens," said Caspian. "A king who has just won a great battle can usually establish himself without the help of a performing lion," said Knickerbrick. There was a fierce growl, probably from Truffle Hunter. "And anyway," Knickerbrick continued, "what came of the kings and their reign? They faded too. But it's very different with the witch. They say she ruled for 100 years, 100 years of winter. There's power, if you like. There's something practical." "But heaven and earth," said the king. "Haven't we always been told that she was the worst enemy of all? Wasn't she a tyrant 10 times worse than Miraz?" "Perhaps," said Knickerbrick in a cold voice. "Perhaps she was, for you humans, if there were any of you in those days. Perhaps she was for some of the beasts. She stamped out the beavers, I dare say. At least, there are none of them left in Narnia now. But she got on all right with us dwarves. I'm a dwarf, and I stand by my own people. We're not afraid of the witch." "But you've joined with us," said Truffle Hunter. "Yes, and a lot of good it has done my people so far," snapped Knickerbrick. "Who is sent on all the dangerous raids? The dwarves. Who goes short when the rations fail? The dwarves. Who—" "Lies! All lies!" said the badger. "And so," said Knickerbrick, whose voice now rose to a scream, "if you can't help my people, I'll go to someone who can." "Is this open treason, dwarf?" asked the king. "Put that sword back in its sheath, Caspian," said Knickerbrick. "Murder at council, eh? Is that your game? Don't be fool enough to try it. Do you think I'm afraid of you? There's 3 on my side, and 3 on yours." "Come on, then!" snarled Truffle Hunter, but he was immediately interrupted. Whew, thank goodness. Truffle Hunter, stepping in there. Wait, she killed all the beavers? Yeah, that's news to me, too. Knickerbrick is going down soon. If anybody's getting comeuppance in this book, it's King Miraz, and Knickerbrick's a close second. Maybe he gets a redemption song. I don't know. This is intense, though. "Stop, stop, stop," said Dr. Cornelius. "You go on too fast. The witch is dead. All the stories agree on that. What does Knickerbrick mean by calling on the witch?" That gray and terrible voice, which had spoken only once before, said, "Oh, is she?" And then the shrill, whining voice began, Oh, bless his heart! His dear little majesty needn't mind about the White Lady, that's what we call her, being dead. The worshipful Master Doctor is only making game of a poor old woman like me when he says that. Sweet Master Doctor, learned Master Doctor, who ever heard of a witch that really died? You can always get them back." "Call her up," said the grey voice. "We are all ready. Draw the circle. Prepare the blue fire." Above the steadily increasing growl of the badger and Cornelius's sharp "What?" rose the voice of King Caspian like thunder. "So that is your plan, Knickerbrick! Black sorcery and the calling up of an accursed ghost? And I see who your companions are, a hag and a werewolf!" The next minute or so was very confused. There was an animal roaring, a clash of steel. The boys and Trumpkin rushed in. Peter had a glimpse of a horrible, grey, gaunt creature, half man and half wolf, in the very act of leaping upon a boy about his own age. And Edmund saw a badger and a dwarf rolling on the floor in a sort of catfight. Trumpkin found himself face to face with the hag. Her nose and chin stuck out like a pair of nutcrackers. Her dirty grey hair was flying about her face, and she had just got Dr. Cornelius by the throat. At one slash of Trumpkin's sword, her head rolled on the floor. Then the light was knocked over, and it was all about swords, teeth, claws, fists, and boots for about 60 seconds. Then silence. "Are you all right, Ed?" I think so," panted Edmund. "I've got that brute Knickerbrick, but he's still alive." "Weights and water bottles," came an angry voice. "It's me you're sitting on. Get off! You're like a young elephant." "Sorry, DLF," said Edmund. "Is that better?" "Ow! No!" bellowed Trumpkin. "You're putting your boot in my mouth. Go away!" "Is King Caspian anywhere?" asked Peter. "I'm here," said a rather faint voice. "Something bit me." They all heard the noise of someone striking a match. It was Edmund. The little flame showed his face, looking pale and dirty. He blundered about for a little, found the candle — they were no longer using the lamp, for they had run out of oil — set it on the table, and lit it. When the flame rose clear, several people scrambled to their feet. 6 faces blinked at one another in the candlelight. "We don't seem to have any enemies left," said Peter. "There's the hag, dead." He turned his eyes quickly away from her. "And Knickerbrick, dead too. And I suppose this thing is a werewolf. It's been so long since I've seen one. Wolf's head and man's body. That means he was just turning from man into wolf at the moment he was killed. And you, I suppose, are King Caspian?" "Yes," said the other boy, "but I've no idea who you are." Here we get a lovely little artist rendering of the scuffle in the dark. We can see, well, in a moment we'll be able to see. In just one moment here, we're all going to be able to see it. We can see the werewolf mid-shapeshift, taking a chomp out of Caspian, the 2 dwarves rolling around on the ground, and the hag who is just about to be separated from her body, or from her head, depending on where you allow the self to reside. Separated from herself. Goodness. Mulrick says, "Why are the boys waiting so long to show themselves?" Yeah, they really waited it out. I imagine it was for dramatic effect. "It's the High King, King Peter," said Trumpkin. "Your Majesty is very welcome," said Caspian. "And so is your Majesty," said Peter. I haven't come to take your place, you know, but to put you in it. Oh, Peter's going to put Caspian in his place. That is freaking cool, that pick. Like something from the Da Vinci Code. Yeah, that's cool stuff, man. What a dark chapter. Your Majesty, said another voice at Peter's elbow. He turned and found himself face to face with the badger. Peter leaned forward, put his arms round the beast, and kissed the furry head. It wasn't a girlish thing for him to do, because he was the High King. Now, there's a lot to unpack in that one little sentence. Somehow, by virtue of being High King, he dodges gender norms, whether or not they make sense. Best of badgers, he said. You never doubted us all through. No credit to me, your majesty, said Truffle Hunter. I'm a beast, and we don't change. I'm a badger, what's more, and we hold on. I am sorry for Knickerbrick, said Caspian, though he hated me from the first moment he saw me. He had gone sour inside from long suffering and hating. If we had won quickly, he might have become a good dwarf in the days of peace. I don't know which of us killed him. I'm glad of that. You're bleeding, said Peter. Yes, I'm bitten, said Caspian. It was that wolf thing. Cleaning and bandaging the wound took a long time, and when it was done, Trumpkin said, Now, before everything else, we want some breakfast. But not here, said Peter. No, we want to go to the dining hall. Put us up in a chalet. No, said Caspian with a shudder, and we must send someone to take the bodies away. Let the vermin be flung into a pit, said Peter, but the dwarf we will give to his people to be buried in their own fashion. They breakfasted at last in another of the dark cellars of Aslan's How. It was not such a breakfast as they would have chosen, for Caspian and Cornelius were thinking of venison pasties, and Peter and Edmund of buttered eggs and hot coffee. But what everyone got was a little bit of cold bear meat out of the boys' pockets, a lump of hard cheese, an onion, and a mug of water. But, from the way they fell to, anyone would have supposed it was delicious. And that is the end of our story for tonight. Ooh. Dang, that one was fun. I like doing the spooky voices. Kind of get to take my time with it. Well, it seems as though things have finally begun to turn around for our boy Prince Caspian. The reinforcements have officially arrived, and in the nick of time, too. Not so much for Knickerbrick. Although, you know, anybody that wants to conjure the devil should probably have some strong opposition at any rate. And I believe it was the wolf who lunged first. So, yeah, they get a pass. They get a pass. All's fair in love and war. And treason is no laughing matter. Gracious. Oh. Well, the way that I've planned it out from the very beginning, because I have, and it's all according to plan, is that every night this week we will get to read one more chapter, and we will read the last chapter of Prince Caspian on Thursday evening. I don't know how long they're going to be, but I might take my time with them a little bit, and I'm always game to have some fun hangouts in the chat as well. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm excited to round this one off and move on to, I think the Dawn Treader comes next, so we'll get a little bit of a seafaring naval action, as well as one of the more popular characters, Reepicheep, who I will have to devise another voice for as well. Your tea looks delicious. I assure you it is. It's some good stuff. Well, friends, family, sweet dreams, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you all tomorrow night, and in the meantime, get some rest, look at the sky, read a book, give somebody a hug, and rest well. Good night, moon, and good night, stars. Good night, trucks, and good night, cars. Good night, shoes, and good night, hats. Good night, dogs, and good night, cats. Good night to friends and family. Good night to you and to me. Sweet dreams, everybody. Bye-bye.